Hello, online and hybrid students. I wanted to just go over a couple things with you today. We actually have several people gone, so if you happen to not be in class today, hopefully I can go through a few things that will help you keep going and moving forward. I am actually going to share my screen with you. So this is what you should see today on Google Classroom. And you'll notice that this is an assignment. There is an assignment today. I'm going to talk about that when I'm done here. So you're going to maybe do things a little bit differently than the people in class. The first thing I'd like you to do is watch the video about the birth of psychology. So this just talks about some of the historical things that led up to psychology becoming a social science. It's actually fairly new in the whole scheme of the world. And so it's kind of interesting to see how the ideas of psychology developed through the years. What I really want to focus on, though, are some of the contemporary approaches to psychology. And we're going to be actually going through this quite a bit. We're going to be referring back to these and talking about these a lot. So these are definitely things you're going to want to know. This is covered in your text on page 8 at the bottom, and it ends around page, I don't know, 13. So if you want to refer to that in your book, that's where it is. In class, the students are going to be doing a Twitter exercise, and so they're going to be in small groups, depending upon how many people I have in class today, creating a Twitter definition of each of the different approaches to psychology. And then we're going to be hanging those on the wall so that we'll be able to look at those and reference those throughout the trimester. But since you guys aren't going to be there, I decided to just go through some notes that I have about those different approaches. So I just want to briefly go through those with you. And I will post this if you want access to this. You can print this off or you can use this as your notes. Or if it works better for you to write it down on your own, that would be okay too. So I'm going to start with the bottom corner where it says biological. So when you're talking about approaches to psychology, people who study psychology will look at it from different viewpoints, and they have different beliefs about why people have behaviors and mental processes. So the biological view is the focus on the physical aspects of psychology. It's a focus on the body, the brain, and the nervous system. So if somebody is suffering from, let's just say, depression, they're going to look at the chemical makeup in the brain and how that is affected by the nervous system. And they might prescribe medication for that because they believe that it is a biological issue and not, some fancy and magical thinking. So the biology of our psychological behaviors, mental processes is really important. The behavioral approach, this was actually developed by B.F. Skinner, John B. Watson, B.F. Skinner, and they really believed that you had to study just behavior, just the things we can observe. You can't necessarily go in and say, well, absolutely this person is thinking this or this person is thinking that, because we can't know that. We can't look at somebody and know what they're thinking or what they're feeling. We can only know what we see. And so the behavioral aspect is just watching what people do and not trying to make any kind of assumption about what they might be thinking or feeling. I actually will have you look kind of across the tree here. If you look at the cognitive view, now the cognitive view is pretty much the exact opposite of the behavioral view or the behavioral approach. So the cognitive approach, whenever you see the word cognitive is the mind. It's about thinking. So cognition is thinking. So it emphasizes our mental processes involved in knowing. So people who are cognitive psychologists, they're interested in what you're thinking, what's going through your mind at the time. And yeah, they might be a little bit interested in behavior, but only as it results from our cognitive processes or our mental processes. So these are kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum when you think of behavioral and you think of cognitive, because one is our actions and one is our thoughts. So the fourth one that is probably one of the most common ones. So if we talk about the most popular, I don't know if popular is the right word, the most popular approaches, biological, behavioral, cognitive, psychodynamic is the fourth one that falls into that category of kind of popular. The psychodynamic approach was kind of started by Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud is probably a name you've heard. We're going to hear a lot about Sigmund Freud. He gets kind of a bad rap as because he likes to tie everything back to sex and aggression. Like everything is about being angry, usually at your mother, and it really is about things we don't even know about. But he did develop what we call talk therapy, which is a huge development in the field of psychology. And he founded the psychodynamic approach. So the psychodynamic approach focuses on unconscious thought. So the things that the motivations that we have that we don't even know we have those motivations. And the conflict between our biological demands or those unconscious demands and society. So the things that we are thinking that maybe don't fit into the norms of society. We're going to get a lot more into the psychodynamic approach and psychoanalysis. But if you're ever in a situation where you feel like, okay, well, you know, I had a bad childhood, so that's why I am this way, that's the psychodynamic approach. Those are unconscious thoughts and feelings that may have a lot of times developed in those early stages of childhood that we don't remember, but that have huge impacts on our life as we go forward. So those are the four like really, really main ones that people know about and talk about a lot that have been around for a long time. And then we have three additional ones that are a little bit newer, but also have really important aspects that we're going to talk about as we go through the chapters as well. So the next one is humanistic. That's kind of at the top of the tree here. The humanistic approach emphasizes a person's positive qualities, their capacity for positive growth, their freedom to choose their own destiny. So the humanistic approach says you have the ability within you to make choices about what kind of person you're going to be, what type of personality you're going to have, how you're going to move forward in the world. It's a very, very positive, very feel-good approach. It can be frustrating, though, for people who are in really bad situations, who feel like they can't get out of those situations, for an approach to say, well, you just need to try harder, do better, because that doesn't always work. Anybody who's had struggles like that knows that can be really defeating. So humanistic is great, and then it's very positive and it's very empowering. But for people who have, you know, learned helplessness, it can be really discouraging. Evolutionary is the next one, kind of if you go skip cognitive and go down the tree here. Evolutionary, that is just very self-explanatory. Think about evolution, survival of the fittest. That's our adaptation. Natural selection. We continue certain behaviors that move us forward on the evolutionary spectrum. So we continue behaviors and mental processes that allow us to do well in life. And then finally, the sociocultural one. Now, this is one that looks at the influences of our culture, where we live, and how those things affect our behavior and our mental processes, how we feel about things. If anybody has ever traveled outside of the country, you go to different countries and they may have very different viewpoints about things. There are things that are very specifically American in our behaviors and our mental processes. Even within the United States, there are different ways that we think and behave depending upon where we live. So that's kind of an interesting way to look at things. That's more of our cultural impact, but there are also things like your ethnicity, your race, your sexual orientation. All of those things affect your behavior and your mental processes and how you deal with the world. So that was a really, really quick overview of those 7 approaches to psychology. And just to kind of tie it together, in your text, like on page 11, the bottom number, it does kind of tie it together, and I like to read this just to make sure that everybody kind of understands it. So it says, think about the simple experience of seeing a cute puppy. Looking at the puppy involves physical processes in the eye, nervous system, and the brain, the focus of the biological approach to psychology. The moment you spot that puppy, though, you might smile without thinking and reach down to pet the little guy. That reaction might be a learned response based on your past learning with your own dog. That's the behavioralist perspective. That's your behavior. We're going down, we've learned to pet the dog, not really think about what you're thinking. It could be about unconscious memories of a childhood dog. That's the psychodynamic perspective. Or conscious memories that you especially like this breed of dogs. That's a cognitive perspective. Or even evolutionary processes that promoted cuteness to help offspring survive, the evolutionary approach. You might find yourself striking up a conversation with the puppy's owner based on your shared love of dogs. That's the humanistic perspective. And further sociocultural factors might play a role in your decision about whether to ask the owner if holding the puppy would be okay, whether to share those warm feelings about the puppy with others, and even whether, as in some cultures, to view that puppy as food. So it's a little shocking, but that just tells you how just one experience of seeing a puppy might affect you in all of these different approaches to psychology, and how those different psychologists in all those areas might look at that. So I would encourage you to go ahead and get into that text, look through that, refer back to these notes if that's what you need to do. And then the assignment for today is a reflection. So that's, again, on Classroom. And if you open that up, it's just going to ask you to look at which contemporary theory speaks to you the most. So if you're going to be a psychologist, which I realize most of you are not, but if you were going to counsel somebody, or if you were going to, examine something or experiment on something, what approach would you adopt? Which one of those speaks to you the most? Is it the biological, behavioral, psychodynamic, humanistic, cognitive, evolutionary, or sociocultural? So this assignment is actually due on Monday. So if you would please submit that online when you get that finished, and then this will be your first grade for the course, and I will get feedback to you on that and return that as soon as I can. So I think that's it for today. Hopefully this was helpful for you, and you'll be able to, when you get back, whether it's on Monday or Tuesday or after Thanksgiving, or if we ever get back, hopefully you'll be able to jump in and understand this. And as always, if you have a question, if you're not understanding something, please feel free to email me or message me on Classroom, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. So everybody have a good weekend. Stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you soon.